They unleashed all hell upon me, trying to destroy my name, trying to destroy the reputation of myself and the reputation of my family. But even that wouldn't stick, Jack. It wasn't enough. So then they changed my state constitution to then go in and redraw my congressional district to give me a very moderate, easily confused, and easily manipulated district. Why did they do this, Jack? Because they wanted to cover up the sexual perversion and the drugs that are being done inside of Washington, D.C.
After we finished the show yesterday, and you may have seen this online, I'm sure you've seen the news by now, Congressman Eric Swalwell has punched his ticket. He is out. He has resigned from Congress after a video, or I suppose you could say a series of videos posted by Martin Shkreli and myself this past weekend. Videos that show him in what appears to be in bed with a woman that is not his wife, and a woman who was later identified on an escort site, and just very disturbing behavior that was seen from what appears by all accounts to be this individual. And so, you know, the fact that you're seeing all this, it speaks to a wider climate in our Congress. And I've said from the start, that if anyone else who's been in one of these situations, or if you're a staffer who feels that you're restricted by an NDA, or you want to come forward or remain anonymous, reach out to Human Events. Reach out to me, and I'll get you in touch with Harmeet Dillon at DOJ. I'll get you in touch with the proper authorities. If you want to go that route, we'll be able to get information out like this. The email is 1776@humanevents.com. 1776@humanevents.com. Come forward. I don't care what party it is. Republican, Democrat, I don't care. If people are up to stuff like this, and believe me, we know they are. And there are more videos. And we are working diligently to obtain those videos, to verify them, and then present them to you. Because this isn't just about one person. It's about a corrupt culture. It's about the toxic swamp. And there was someone who warned us about this culture of corruption, and about the moral and personal corruption. A couple years ago, people laughed at him. People mocked him. People said he was wrong. Because that's not possible. His name, former Congressman Madison Cawthorn. And he has been absolutely vindicated on this. Madison Cawthorn joins us now. Madison, what is your reaction to seeing these videos and just the last 24 hours, 48 hours of the flurry of information? Because it's not just about Eric Swalwell. We've now seen Tony Gonzalez, and the talk of the town is that there are other shoes that will shortly be dropping.
Well, Jack, I'll tell you, it seems like I'm having a flashback to my time spent in Congress. And, you know, I came out and said what was going on inside of Washington, D.C., something that I assumed was common knowledge all across America, which rightfully so it is. But the swamp did what the swamp always does. They systematically targeted and attacked. You know, the swamp is so accustomed, the uniparty, I'm talking about both sides of the aisle, is so accustomed to patriots getting elected to Congress, getting there for the first time, and then them realizing, oh, this is too big of a problem for me to tackle on my own. I really am not going to be able to get anything done. And these people are offering me power. They're offering me position. They're offering me money. Why would I try and mess up this apple cart? Obviously, this wave's going to crash. I might as well just ride it as long as I can. I called the swamp out. And then when leadership called me into the office and said, hey, listen, we can make sure you have a swimming primary. Everything's going to go great. You'll have a great election. We just need you to be a team player. I held my ground and I said no. And you saw exactly what happened. They unleashed all hell upon me, trying to destroy my name, trying to destroy the reputation of myself and the reputation of my family. But even that wouldn't stick, Jack. It wasn't enough. So then they changed my state constitution to then go in and redraw my congressional district to give me a very moderate, easily confused, and easily manipulated district. Why did they do this, Jack? Because they wanted to cover up the sexual perversion and the drugs that are being done inside of Washington, D.C. And Jack, didn't have to wait for vindication that came just now when we saw Tony Gonzalez have everything that came out with him. What happened to Eric Swalwell, which has been, the fact that it hasn't come out earlier is insane because he sleeps with Chinese spies. But really, just mere months after I was ousted out of office by members of our own party and on the other side of the aisle, then we saw sex tapes coming out of staffers videotaping themselves inside of the Senate hearing chambers. And then we find cocaine inside of the White House. This kind of behavior inside of Washington, D.C. is pervasive. I thought it was disgusting. I thought the American people needed to know, and this swamp destroyed me for it. And that's why I'm coming back with a vengeance.
Well, and Madison, we see these, the videos that Martin and myself released. There's also, I think the New York Post has a video, this yacht party that's running around. And these are videos that were out there. These were guys. And here's what gets me on this. All right, here's what gets me on this. It's not just the videos being there, but just that, what is this culture? What is this culture of our highest elected officials that this is what they're doing behind closed doors? And they don't seem to be trying to hide this very much. They don't seem to be bothered by this very much. Help me to try to understand what it's like when you're sitting there in a seat like that, and then you find out that this is what's going on after hours.
Well, I'll tell you, you're kind of walked through something when you start talking to your staff about it. The rumor mill starts going up saying, oh, well, Madison Cawthorn said this, or this person's thinking about ousting this person for that. And then you're kind of, by third party and by proxy, you're let know that, hey, if this happens, you're going to be sued for this. You're going to be sued for that. You're going to be attacked for this. Maybe you got a speeding ticket here, or then we're going to call your governor and have your state police try and give you tickets every second that you can. They're going to make your life very, very difficult. And, I live a pretty great life. I have an amazing family. My friends are really true and loyal friends. So I felt pretty untouchable. I'm financially extremely secure, blessedly so. The only thing not going for me is the fact that I can't really stand up. Aside from that, I've got a golden life. But even me, they were able to attack so ferociously and so aggressively. And they wanted to use me as somebody that said, hey, this is somebody who can talk to millions of people with the press of a button. He gets more news and more press coverage than anybody else inside of Congress. He speaks at all the major events. He's a superstar within the MAGA movement. And if we can take him down, imagine what we can do to you. And that is essentially what the environment is like inside of Washington, D.C. And, you ask yourself, well, obviously, if that was the case, so many people would stand up. My friends, look at the country we've lived in for the last 8 decades. Whether it's because of outside influence coming from super PACs, whether it's because of, the threat of, legal action being carried out against you for slandering somebody's name, or whether that's the actual threat of them trying to take your seat away from you. For many people, this is the greatest job that these people have ever had. It's the first time they've ever felt like they were cool and funny in their entire life. And so they're trying to do everything they can to not upset the apple cart. And then if they're not going to be able to threaten somebody when it comes to sticks, then they'll offer them carrots. They'll say, well, wouldn't you like the subcommittee chairmanship? Imagine all the good you could do if you didn't take this one guy down because he was just having a little fun. And now listen, I'm a guy's guy. I like to go have a good time. I like smoking a cigar and having the appropriate amount of drinks and having a good time with my friends. But it's very different when you are somebody who's inside of Washington, D.C., who's married and who's out, just gallivanting with women. And, Eric Swalwell, listen, that looks a lot like hookers in the bed with him, to me. And I think that should include some criminal prosecution. But I'll leave that up to the DOJ.
Well, and I mean, look, it's real simple. And we got a quick break coming up. But look, I'm not in Congress, but, I work 8 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day, sometimes more. I don't have time to be away from family out at the clubs or on the yachts and doing all this. And yet here comes this congressman who's paid by the taxpayer to do his job, and he gets to live the life while, he's supposed to be serving, while the rest of us, we're over here working. They're treating it like an 18-year-old on campus. They're not in college for the education. And, you guys, you're not in Congress to do that. You are there to serve. You're there to serve the people. When you stand up and put your name on a ballot, you are doing that for the people of your district. And instead, unfortunately, I think this confirms so many people's view of what actually goes on in Washington, D.C. and in these circles, which you, of course, talked about and rang the alarm bells about several years ago. Right back, Jack Posobiec, Real America's Voice, Human Events Daily.